Welcome to the Leaving Cert Biology channel. This ties hand in hand with our website leavingcertbiology.ie, which is a platform for 5th and 6th year students in Ireland studying Leaving Cert Biology. Of course, we have our TikTok and Instagram page at leavingcertbiology.ie as well, where we offer completely free videos, tips, tricks, exam strategy and trends. And on our website, we have exam paper structure, timing, all of our completely free podcast episodes and so much more. Our aim is to support students all over Ireland. We are back with Unit 1, Chapter Food. Remember, Unit 1 worth 25% minimum of your paper. Food is almost a guaranteed short Section A question worth 20 marks. So food, there is a bit in it, a few mandatory experiments, so let's get into it. So functions of food: growth and repair of cells, an energy source, manufacturing of chemicals for metabolism. Remember, growth and repair are two separate functions. So if you're asked for one function, give growth of cells or repair of cells, or you can be subject to cancelled answers. Now we're going to have a look at the common elements that are found in food. So you have carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, sulfur and phosphorus. You are expected to know these because you can be asked what elements are contained within what different biomolecules. So from this then we have our common elements. We move on to what elements are present in dissolved salts. So we're looking at sodium, magnesium, chlorine, potassium and calcium. Okay, so please do not get these mixed up with the common elements that are found in foods. These are present in our salts. And then lastly, the elements that we need to know that are present as trace elements, and that word trace meaning required in very, very small amounts. And we have iron, copper and zinc. Iron is probably the one that students tend to remember the most. Obviously, it does link to blood, hemoglobin. People that are anemic, are low or deficient in iron. Now we're going to start by looking at what's called biomolecules. We're no longer calling them food groups. So bio, again, bio meaning living. These are chemicals that are made inside a living thing or inside living cells. So biomolecules, again, bio living, make sure we know the term. And we are going to discuss the 4 different types of biomolecules that are found in food. The first one is going to be carbohydrates. The second one is lipids, third one is proteins, and fourth one is vitamins. We're also going to have a look at minerals and water. Okay, be very careful with lipids. You probably know them as fats, but we are no longer going to call them that. So we're going to start off with the first one, carbohydrates. They are composed of the elements carbon, hydrogen and oxygen. It is really important that you know the ratio of hydrogen to oxygen is 2:1. So for every 1 oxygen, there are 2 hydrogens. Okay, so that is going to be important, and it is important that you know the ratio just for the carbohydrate biomolecules. Okay, so let's have a look at some examples and some types of carbohydrates. We can have the general formula for carbohydrates, CxH2OY. For example, in the monosaccharide glucose, X is 6, Y is 6. And remember, for every 1 oxygen, we have 2 hydrogens, so C6H12O6. And that is the chemical formula for glucose. And you would have heard me there say the word monosaccharide. So monosaccharide is the basic unit of a carbohydrate. There are 3 types, as I've said. So monosaccharide is 1 sugar unit, and an example of a monosaccharide would be glucose, or another example would be fructose. Monosaccharides are the basic units of carbohydrates. The second type then are disaccharides. I want you to think di meaning 2. So these are 2 sugar units, in other words, 2 monosaccharides that are joined together, for example, maltose and lactose. And thirdly then, we have polysaccharides. So polysaccharides are many sugar units that are joined together. You need to know one in plants and animals, so cellulose and starch in plants, glycogen in the liver in animals. Structural role then of carbohydrates: they make up the structure, cellulose, of plant cell walls, and chitin or chitin make up fungal cell walls and the exoskeleton of insects. Remember, structural role means the role in physically making up the structure of something. However, metabolic role involves the role of something in the metabolism of an organism. So the metabolic role of carbohydrates: they are an energy source or an energy store. They can be stored in plants as starch or stored in animals in glycogen, in particular in the liver. And a recap there that the basic unit of a carbohydrate is a monosaccharide. Next, we need to know the sources of carbohydrates, or where we find them. So bread, rice, pasta, potatoes, vegetables. Be careful with this. Sometimes students really overthink this. Just where you find carbohydrates in your everyday food. Okay, so that's our first biomolecule, and now we're going to move on to the second one, which I said we're going to refer to as lipids. Again, they're composed of the same elements as carbohydrates, so carbon, hydrogen and oxygen. However, the ratio is different than the one that we've just learned. We do not need to learn the ratio for lipids, we just need to know that the elements carbon, hydrogen and oxygen make up lipids. Now, lipids come in different forms, and it's going to depend, of course, on whether we're room temperature. So we have fats, oils and steroids are examples of lipids. Fats are solid at room temperature and oils are liquid at room temperature. That is how we tell fats and oils apart. And you could be asked that in an exam, as it is a very common question to appear. Okay, so be very, very careful. Fats are solid, oils are liquid. Steroids you might come across in human reproduction. Then we have the structural role, again, in physically making up the structure of something. Lipids are a component of the cell membranes. Remember the phospholipid bilayer. They are used for heat and insulation, and they're found on the myelin sheet of neurons, which increases the speed that electrical impulses are carried. The metabolic role then of lipids, they're used as a long-term energy store, make sure you use that word store, in cells, and then they're broken down to release this energy when it is needed. So again, be very careful whether you're asked for the structural role or the metabolic role. Talking about the structure, we need to know the basic unit of a lipid, and it's known as a triglyceride. You'll see it drawn here. A triglyceride has one glycerol and 3 fatty acids. Tri for 3. Okay, so that is the basic unit of a lipid. Make sure we know how to draw it as well as describe it. Then we have saturated and unsaturated fats. Unsaturated fats have double or triple bonds, for example, vegetable fat, and saturated fats have only single bonds. Chemistry students will know this particularly well, and an example would be animal fat. You will do more on this in the blood chapter and the heart chapter. Then we have a phospholipid, is the second type of lipid. This time we have 1 glycerol, 2 fatty acids and 1 phosphate. Remember, it is found in the phospholipid bilayer with the water-loving phosphate head and the fatty acid water-hating tails. Again, we need to know sources of where we find lipids in food. So butter, oils, margarine, cream, olives, avocados are all food sources of lipids. Okay, so that is our second biomolecule, and now we're going to move on to the third one, and the one that is going to appear again and again, which is proteins. Proteins have carbon, hydrogen, oxygen and nitrogen. Nitrogen is essential for the formation of protein. Some proteins contain phosphorus or sulfur, but not all, and that is going to be important. The nitrogen, you must remember, is always present in proteins. This can come up again in the nitrogen cycle, as we know plants need nitrogen to make protein. Let's have a look at the structure of proteins. So proteins are composed of amino acids. There are 20 common amino acids, and amino acids are held together by peptide bonds or peptide links. Proteins must be folded in order to become functional. The shape of a protein determines its function, so whether they're what we call globular or whether they're fibrous, for example. So we're going to have to look a bit more into this. So structure, a peptide is made up of 20 or less amino acids, a polypeptide is made up of more than 20 amino acids, and a protein is a long-chained polypeptide with over 200 amino acids. So peptide, polypeptide proteins, you might come across these if you study home economics as well. So as always, as with all of our biomolecules, we are going to have to give a structural role first. We have fibrous proteins such as collagen found in bones and tendons, keratin found in hair and nails, and myosin found in muscles. So these proteins are folded into long fibers. So that is the structural role of a protein. And then we have the metabolic role. Globular proteins, so we have enzymes and hormones. Remember, enzymes speed up chemical reactions without being consumed. Globular proteins are folded to form 3D shapes. Now we have to have a look again at the food sources that we could find protein in. So we have lean meat, eggs, fish, milk. You could also say green veg. You can say whichever ones are the handiest ones for you to look at and learn. So that is our third biomolecule, proteins. Next, we're going to look at number 4, which are vitamins. Students do tend to get quite confused with these, so make sure you pay attention here. Many vitamins are coenzymes. They are needed in order for enzymes to work. There are 2 types that we need to study: fat-soluble vitamins and water-soluble vitamins. Soluble means that it dissolves in. Okay, so we are going to look at these in detail and note the examples in particular. You do need to know these, as stated in your curriculum. So fat soluble first. These are vitamins that dissolve in fat. For example, vitamin D. They remain stored in the body for a long period of time. Use, they allow the body to absorb calcium. This is needed in bone formation. And the chemical name for vitamin D is known as calciferol. So these remain in the body for long periods of time. Fat soluble, they dissolve in fat. Example, vitamin D. If we look at a deficiency, so vitamin D is needed for strong teeth and bones. A deficiency, also known as a lack of, can cause rickets where bones begin to bend in children and osteomalacia in adults. Then we have a food source such as dairy products, fish, liver oils, sun-on skin and egg yolks are all sources of vitamin D. So that is our fat soluble vitamin. Please do not get them mixed up with the next one, which is water soluble. Example, vitamin C. These do not remain in the body for a long period of time. They dissolve in water. Food sources, citrus fruits like oranges or lemons, and they're used to make collagen for connective tissue in the skin, bones, cartilage, ligaments and the lining of blood vessels. The chemical name for vitamin C is known as ascorbic acid. Okay, so water soluble, not stored in the body for a long period of time. Deficiency disease associated with vitamin C, or a lack of, would be scurvy, which symptoms include bleeding of the mouth and gums, loose teeth and slow healing of wounds. Okay, so make sure we know water soluble, fat soluble, examples, deficiencies and symptoms of those. Next, we're moving on to the fifth, not the major type, but it is a fifth biomolecule, which are minerals. Animal minerals first. These are required in small amounts. You are required to know examples. So calcium required for strong bones and teeth. The source, so calcium is found in dairy products like milk and cheese. And a deficiency or associated with a lack of calcium would be osteoporosis, where bones begin to become brittle. So you need to know the name, the source and a disease associated with deficiency. Next mineral, sticking with animals, we have iron. Iron, Fe is the chemical symbol. It's required for the formation of hemoglobin, which helps to transport oxygen in the blood. Deficiency associated with a lack of iron is anemia. Iron source is found in meat and green veg. So again, the name, the deficiency, disease, and the source of where we find it. Now we're going to have a look at our plant minerals. These get mixed up all of the time, so pay particular attention here. We have calcium, which aids in the attachment of cell walls to one another. It helps form the middle lamella, which is a thin membrane between plant cells that holds the cell walls together. It is found in soil, water. Make sure we say that. That is the source. Okay. You will come across middle lamella or middle lamella in cell division when you look at cytokinesis of plant cells. The next mineral that we're going to look at is magnesium, or Mg. It's required for the formation of the green pigment chlorophyll and also for the formation of ATP. Again, the source is found in soil water. So the name, what it's used for, and the source of where we find it is super important for plant minerals. Again, please pay particular attention to these, as students commonly get them mixed up with one another. So now we're going to have a look at water. Water makes up approximately 70 to 95% of a normal body cell, 90% of the mass of plant cells, and blood plasma is approximately 90% water. Remember, the plasma is the liquid part of the blood. Hence, now we know why it's liquid, because it's made up of 90% water. Be very careful with the next bit when we talk about functions of water. You have to make full sentences and not just keywords. So functions of water, it aids in the transport of heat. It acts as a solvent, acts as a reaction medium, transports minerals and nutrients, and gives cells their strength or turgidity, which you come across in diffusion and osmosis. Don't just say words like transport, heat, reaction. You must actually explain to your examiner that you know what you're talking about. Mandatory experiments that can come up in section B, tests for protein, lipids, starch and reducing sugar. Remember, detailed notes on experiments can be found in my new textbook with combined workbook on experiments worth 15% to your course. Recap then based on the learning objectives from your syllabus. State the function of food, name 3 reasons for requiring food, name the 6 common elements in food, 5 elements present in dissolved salts, name the 3 trace elements required, name the element components, biomolecular components and sources of carbohydrates, fats, oils and proteins. Then name 1 water-soluble vitamin and 1 fat-soluble vitamin. We've done that and we've given deficiency diseases associated with each. And then state the requirements of use of any 2 minerals in plants and animals. State 5 good reasons why water is important for organisms. Thanks so much for watching. Please like and subscribe for future videos.